So I want to talk about a very controversial topic today, something that's the number one searched thing on Google at the moment, which is a combination of gaslighting and narcissism. And I believe I can offer a unique perspective because I have an insider's perspective, not just from a guy's point of view, but from a person with a personality disorder and with narcissism. It's narcissistic in itself to even say I'm one of the most authentic people you'll ever meet, but it's a contradiction in itself. But I'm very authentic in the way that I like to just tell it how it is and be honest and be truthful. And when I was 18, as a part of a pre-sentence report, which is when you're going to go to prison and probation write a letter and tell the judge what they recommend for sentencing, my probation officer sent me for a psychiatric assessment because I seemed to show no remorse or guilt or shame for my violent convictions that I had, which were towards men. I was diagnosed with an antisocial personality disorder, which is essentially the clinical term that's given to psychopaths. And there's a range of psychopaths, and a lot of them live amongst us. 1% of the population are hardcore psychopaths that could murder you without flinching. And 80% of the prison's population have personality disorders of some form. There's many different types, from borderline personality disorder to emotionally unstable personality disorder to all sorts of different ones. And there's an argument whether it's nature or nurture, but I would probably guess it's more nurture. And what I mean by that is, were we born with it, or was it created due to a coping mechanism? And 9 times out of 10, or 99 times out of 100, or 999 times out of 1,000, you'll find that people with these types of personality disorders have had some kind of extreme trauma growing up that has caused them to shut their emotions off in order to protect themselves. But I don't know. It's a big question mark. It's something that I'm exploring. But I want to share this because I think this might help a lot of women out there, and also a lot of men, to identify with their behaviour. But I want to talk about gaslighting. It might not be a term you've heard before. It might be a phrase that's popped up that you've never really understood. Gaslighting is essentially a way and it's typically male, and you'll find it presented from men, but it is, of course, both sexes that are capable of this. And probably equally. My honest thought there was they can probably get away with it better than men. I think we're a little bit more obvious with our behaviour, whereas women can sometimes fall under the radar because they have a certain persona. Controversial in itself, but that was my honest thought that came up. But gaslighting is when you manipulate somebody. It usually happens in a relationship. And let's use a guy and a girl, for example. So I'm in a relationship and I gaslight my girlfriend or wife by manipulating her into thinking that she's wrong and she's going crazy and there's something wrong with her, and all of the things that I've done and my problems are because of her. Now, it's a very deep form of manipulation because it can be done in a very manipulative way. It's usually done by narcissistic people, and narcissistic people are essentially people that only think about themselves. They don't have any regard for other people's emotions or feelings, and all they care about is power and gain and winning and, what they can get from people. Some people will be good at hiding it. Some of them are some of our most successful leaders that have ever existed because of the kind of ruthless decisions they need to make. However, in a relationship, if there's no awareness around this topic, both sides could be in a bit of confusion. The male, if we're using the male as a scenario as being a narcissistic person with a personality disorder possibly, or maybe not, or maybe they are just gaslighting and they are just think, oh, I've done something bad there, let me try and flip that. That can sometimes happen subconsciously. Sometimes the narcissism is so instinctive that it's actually how the person behaves. And I say that because I know that I've done it before. I've had arguments before and I felt 100% right in what I'm saying. I've looked back and reflected after and thought, they did nothing wrong. That was all me. That was all me. So I can put my hands up to say that I know that it can happen unconsciously, and that doesn't excuse it. But it can also happen consciously. It's a way of narcissistic people getting away with what they want to get away with. And some of the symptoms and signs to look out for is if you are a woman and you are experiencing potentially gaslighting, you'll start to question yourself, you'll start to question sanity and reality, and you get very confused. And it's usually around arguments. It's not going to just come out of nowhere. They're not going to whisper in your ear while you're asleep. It's going to come from a toxic relationship where arguments are being had, and over a period of time, you could get beaten down to the point where you start to feel like you are the problem. So I wanted to bring a little bit of awareness to this because it's a hot topic right now. Narcissism in itself, people might not have heard of that. People do a good job of hiding their narcissism. Some of the nicest people you've ever met are narcissistic. Maybe some of the nicest people you've ever met are psychopaths. And actually, I'm an antisocial personality disorder, and I live in the middle. So it's important to understand that there's a spectrum, okay? There's people that will use it for harm, and they will harm other people. They will manipulate people's feelings. They will hurt people physically. They will do anything they can to gain something. Could be financially. There are also other people that use their logical brain to solve complex problems, or to make decisions that are difficult, that involve emotions, or to understand somebody on a deeper level without the influence of being consumed by empathy and a pendulum swing of emotion that stops them from being able to help that person. And I see myself being in the middle. My emotions are very low. I don't feel that much. I understand things much more. So let's talk about two other things. You got a sociopath and you got an empath. A sociopath, it's weird because it sounds sociable, is actually somebody who has low emotional, usually narcissistic, and usually, quite disruptive and get involved with crime, and usually quite charismatic and quite manipulative. And some of these people end up, like I said, becoming either leaders of the world because they use their traits for good, or they also become serial killers. There's also your empath, which is your person that absorbs other people's emotions and energy. So they're consumed by emotion constantly. They hear something on the news, their friend's upset, and they get upset, and they can't think straight, they can't see straight. These people find it very difficult to function sometimes in life. But the ones that manage it obviously live amazing lives where they really feel people's emotions and they really connect on a deep level. Well, it's harder for me to identify the benefits of that because I'm not on that end of the spectrum, but there are some huge, beautiful things that can come from being an empath. Joy, fulfillment must feel so strong and vivid. The simplest of life, like the falling of snow, could leave a tear in your eye, whereas to a sociopath, it's just fucking cold. The point I'm trying to make, well, there's a few points. One, I want to admit I'm in the middle. I've got a low emotional scale, but I'm able to understand people, and I'm able to understand my behavior in a way that I can control it and use it for good. So I care about people, but I care about them more in my head. I understand them. I feel them, but I understand them, and I logically understand it. And so let me give you an example of an empath and a sociopath, how they might communicate. So an empath might be like, "Oh, hey, how you doing? Yeah, nice to meet you." And they're thinking, "I'm getting a really good vibe from this guy. I'm getting a really good energy from this guy." And they're sensing all these things. They're sensing all these feelings. They're feeling the warmth. They're analyzing on an emotional spectrum the way that it feels. Whereas a sociopath will be like, I like the values this person has. I like the way that they grips my hand on the handshake. I trust this guy. He's intelligent. He could benefit me. We could be good friends. I relate to him. One's brain, one's heart. Now, the reason why I share this with the gaslighting is there's such a lack of awareness around where anybody is on this spectrum. If you're a woman listening to this, you might have a sociopathic, narcissistic boyfriend. Or you might have a sociopathic, narcissistic girlfriend. And their behavior might be so manipulative and so cunning and they seem so polite and so friendly and so well put together that you're for sure that it's your fault when it's not. All right? This isn't a one-side thing. I think it is predominantly male, actually. Not sure why that is, but it for sure happens for two things. So some of the things to be looking out for if you're a woman is manipulative behavior, lying, a lack of understanding or consideration for your feelings, if they feel very cold, if they don't show any interest in you, and the arguments always seem to happen and you just don't really understand how it happened and what it's all about. Somehow it feels like it's your fault. You could be getting gaslighted. Same with you guys. If you're the guy, have a real look at yourself. What is the issue? Because sometimes the symptom that's happening that's causing the argument could be actually not anything that deserves to be argued about, but is actually something that is hitting upon you. Maybe it makes you feel inferior. Maybe it makes you feel less powerful. Maybe it makes you feel embarrassed or weak. And these are things that narcissistic people and antisocial people will despise. It takes away the things that they have, Or you might blow things out of proportion because they seem bigger to you. Someone insults your intelligence or something like that. If this is all you have, you don't have so much of this. And someone challenges this, they're challenging everything that you stand by. And you might blow things out of proportion, and that might feel fully justified because they are essentially prodding your strength. And you're going to retaliate in any way that you feel will help you win that scenario. And you might resort to tactics that you're not even consciously aware of. Brain's powerful. Just because you have narcissistic traits, and by the way, you can have narcissistic traits and not be a narcissist. You can show narcissism at times. You can also be on this spectrum. You can be diagnosed and undiagnosed. You can be male or female. There is this, but going back to what I was saying, I'm in the middle. So I understand my behavior. And I can look at my behavior. And I'm no angel, and sometimes I slip up and I can't see it, and I have to reflect and come back and say, I've just thought about what I just said, and I've realized I've done this, and I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. And it's about learning to control and understand yourself. The key is awareness. If you have awareness around the narcissism, if you have awareness around the personality disorder, if you have awareness around the gaslighting, female or male, and both of you as a couple, it should be something that you should both read and understand so that you can be aware of the signs and symptoms. Because then when it happens, it's like, you're gaslighting me. And then the guy might be like, I'm not fucking gaslighting you. And then the girl might say, tell you what, go away, go and sit in the car for 10 minutes, have a little think about it, come back. He might come back and go, babe, you're right. Sorry. You've just developed awareness, control, a coping mechanism in order to be able to manage that scenario in a safe and healthy way. And by the way, disclaimer, I'm not a therapist, so this isn't advice that you should live your life upon. This is my opinion, okay? And this is just my insights. From a guy's perspective, it doesn't usually talk about narcissism. It usually comes from females that are very aware of it because they're on the opposite end of the receiving end most of the time, and they're trying to help other women to get out of that. And also because I'm on the end of the spectrum of having the disorder and knowing that I've done that in the past. And also knowing that I still can do it today if I'm not careful. So today was a very deep topic and a very controversial topic, a very interesting topic, I think. We've covered sociopathy, we've covered empathy, what are they called again? Empaths, sociopaths. We've covered gaslighting, narcissism. And it could very well be the fact that you are experiencing that in one way or another. My advice, if you're a woman specifically, and you've got a man that's doing this in a very abnormal way, in a very aggressive way, is to seek help from professionals. Tell your parents, tell the police, because these are the kinds of arguments that escalate into the true crime documentaries that we see on Netflix and YouTube every single day. Exactly that. There are millions of people locked up for killing their spouse. It's probably the number one reason. It's just the number one suspect in every murder, isn't it? The spouse. Male and female. And it usually comes from some kind of mental imbalance. Well put together people don't kill people. But narcissists, people with personality disorders, especially impaired with alcohol and drugs, have the disability to understand and rationalize their decisions anymore, and can make impulsive mistakes that lead them to argue, to fight, to become physically aggressive, and to murder. This was a very different tone to one of my usual videos, but I think something that can be helpful for a lot of people. And also, I'm no expert. This is just from my own perspective. There's people that niche into this subject and they coach on narcissism, or maybe they have, niche in gaslighting, and there's niches upon niches upon niches these days, and I know a fraction. I'm just sharing my opinion. So if I've said anything wrong, please forgive me. This is just my opinion, and that's right in itself. There'll be people with their own opinion, there'll be different terminologies and different ways of expressing it, but I hope this sheds some light and some clarity and helps somebody have a better relationship with each other, because they don't have to be so toxic. You could have one person that's just mildly narcissistic that is causing some issues in the relationship. A conversation around it, some awareness around it, and some reading about it, and maybe watching this video, to have a conversation mutually about the fact that this does come up and ways of dealing with it when it does, could be the difference between you having a really unhealthy relationship and you having a really great, healthy relationship. It doesn't have to be on this extreme end of murder. It could just be the difference between having less arguments, and having your kids have less shouting in their house. And I hope that can at least do that for 1, 2, 10,000 people watching, who knows. So this has been Raymond Taylor. Remember, you are in control, even of this stuff, even if it's really hard. And you are enough, you have enough, and you are loved enough. Thank you.